Hello there, dear. How are you doing? Today we have a new dragon to unlock, and we also have the Dragon of the Month to get hatching. So this is of course BRANT, who is the current Dragon of the Month for this month, and he is part of that yearly collection of course, but he's also part of the quarterly collection, in which case we're going to get our hands on DRAKKAR, the big ship. But BRANT here is a legendary earth and energy dragon, and as always I wouldn't really recommend that anyone use a legendary because it is a legendary, but he does have an earth shield, which I guess in theory could make him a bit useful. But either way, that is BRANT hatched, and then the Vikalanders collection is complete. So you have collected all of the dragons, congrats, DRAKKAR. And DRAKKAR, of course, is that big chonky boy that we were looking forward to, and then we'll claim him. And of course, this does mean that now, after we hatch DRAKKAR, that is half of this year's collection done, and then we're gonna have the Outsiders collection to begin, and then we'll have to hatch all three of those, get that dragon, then hatch the next three, get that dragon, and then we will unlock the main reward for this year. No idea what that's gonna be, but I'm still looking forward to an Eliza dragon. Don't know about you. But anyway, this little dragon has a lot of heart, but seems to bumble into plenty of trouble. Perhaps it simply wants to prove itself. It reminds this trainer of young BRANT, and so it shall be the BRANT Dragon. I mean, it does kind of look like him, right? That's the whole point behind these dragons. It's like the humans have entered some sort of weird DNA replicating machine, but instead of them making them into other humans, or like android copies, they just turn into dragons. Which, I don't know, would they have that sort of technology back in Viking times? Probably not, but hey, I guess it's just the thing, and we just have to accept it. But, you know, I still always recommend that you level up your dragons a little bit, even if it's not just for them to be bred, but mainly just so that they can, you know, generate the gold while they're in the habitat. But look at this guy. He's got the fur on his neck, he's got this cool thing on his head, he's got, I don't know, it looks like he's literally stitched up, which is kind of freaky. That must hurt. I know that when you get surgery and you get stitched up, that can just leave you feeling a bit weird with some scars. So hey, I guess that is just his thing. I guess he'll just sit there in that divine habitat for now. But we've got that egg, so we will go ahead and hatch DRAKKAR, and that's going to be 1 day and 22 hours before he is done. I would speed it up, but I mean, wasting that many hatching relics just before we have divine event, I don't think is a good idea. So I guess we will do that later on. But I did breed BRANT through the super useful combination of these two, Fire plus Academic. And the thing with this combination is that there are quite a few dragons, but there's only one long timer. And if you use the double egg relics, then you've got no chance of getting the long timer. So it's actually pretty good overall. So you can just try and get a dupe if you want, maybe not. It's not really ideal to go for duplicate legendaries now. Or even if you were trying to breed BRANT and you only have one breeding den, it wouldn't really be a good idea, because we do have that new divine event starting. So not really recommended to fill up any of your breeding dens or anything like that. That would be very silly, because we are going to have things happening. So you don't want to be doing that just before the event starts. And that is the main thing to note. During the major divine events, you will probably suffer in terms of breeding and things like that, because we are going to have castle events, and if you actually want to finish them, you're going to suffer in the overall breeding department. So most of your normal regular breeding is probably going to end up getting put on hold. That is if you're taking it seriously. And so that's why this week was the best time to try and get BRANT, get that collection section done, and also if you wanted the Dragon of the Week, probably not a good idea to go for the Dragons of the Week during the event either. I mean, you could try. You could certainly try, but without a second extra den, it's probably not going to go too well. But I guess the last minute things to think about and prepare is that you do need to make sure your dragons are as even as possible going into the event so that you can grind out the dungeon from day one. And that's essentially what it's gonna be. Like, if you don't grind the dungeon usually, you're gonna have to. So, I hope you've got a team ready. Like, this week I've not been doing very much grinding, as you can see. Like, not very much grinding in the dungeon at all. Because, I mean, it's just a regular dungeon week. I don't really care too much, because it's a regular dungeon week. And plus, I'm not playing this super optimally, because one thing that you should be doing if you want to try and get as much value out of the dungeon as possible is, at the beginning, rather than just killing all of the enemy dragons, if you've got a quest like perform 13 weak attacks, for example, you're better off just, instead of blessing or anything like that, if you've got blesses, is just shielding up your team and then going for hits on the enemies so that they count towards your weak attack quests. And yes, it's gonna take forever if you do it like that, but that's how you do it. And I really would have, if I was being super optimal, like replaced the lantern dragon with a different earth dragon. And so that's why just preparing for these tasks to actually get them done is so important, because like if we had 2 earth dragons, for example, here, we would have gotten a load more of these done and then we wouldn't have to do as much later on. But you don't want to be actually knocking out the enemy dragons when you've got like weak attack quests open and things like that. You don't want to be killing them. So another thing that you can do is, instead of taking them out like with this lantern dragon here, is if you are going to kill one of the enemies, you can just go for a miss as well. That is another thing that you can do during these dungeon weeks, because otherwise you're going to go through your dragons like this and you're going to have basically no progress actually being made. So I just wanted to give you an example of things, like showing you what not to do essentially, and how you can improve and actually get more value out of doing it. Because like, if we'd have done the prepping, we probably would have had this weak attack quest done by now, we would have had the other task done, so that would have been at least, probably I would say like another 500 stepping stones for this run, for example, done. So all I could do is reiterate that doing the tasks is the important part of the dungeon. I mean, if you don't want to do the tasks, then feel free, but you're probably not going to get too much value out of the dungeon. So just prepare, get yourself ready and in high gear, and you know, hope that we get some nice dungeon rotation RNG as well, because it is going to depend on which dungeon weeks we actually do get while the event is on. For instance, if we get lots of burnout dungeons, you'll probably see a lot of very, very angry people complaining about it. Which we don't want those. We want the nice and easy fire dungeons. We want the nice and easy, I guess some wind dungeons wouldn't be too bad either. But we don't want any burnouts or voids. They're the nasty ones. At least the earth ones, like if you've got metal or something to remove them, they're not too bad. But otherwise, yeah, really not ideal. But like you can see, we got that task done now, and then the next one is defeat 2 dragons with 1 blow. So rather than me going for a hit on here and killing just him, we'd need to make sure that we can kill both of them. So this would be the stage where I'd probably bless the lantern just to get that one done. And at the same time, we also want to get the weak attack quest done. So if anything, we can bless and then take them out with Neza or Emroja to get that quest done first, and then see what the next task is, so that we can do both at the same time. So then, for instance, we could go for a miss, and then when we come back to Emroja, we go and take out this guy, we get this task done, and then we've got more weak attack quests. So then it's like, do we really want to be defeating dragons again? Maybe we don't. So, you know, you should definitely spend the time trying to actively grind out these quests if you want to get the most value out of each dungeon run. I mean, you don't have to, it's just you'll gain a lot more out of it, and I think this is something that newer players aren't really prepared for, because it does require knowledge of how do you actually survive all of these waves of enemies, and at the same time you do need the actual team there to do it. So, like, you need a shield on your teams to be able to do that grinding, for example, because, obviously, you don't want to be dying. I think that is pretty obvious, really. But we're getting to the stage here where our dragons are getting close to death when we don't shield. So, the shield has to be up all the time. and sometimes they'll use shadow, which will have an effect on our dragons. So, you know, I have done dungeon guides before, but I think that for the players that really actively need it, it's more so just a misunderstanding of how some things work, or just a complete lack of knowledge of how these things work. And when I say grind the dungeon, this is what I mean. I mean not going for KOs and going for the tasks, like really actively going for the tasks. And this is sort of what those runs would look like, except a lot more grinding at the beginning, as you could probably tell from what I was trying to say. But it could take forever. It could take 20 minutes if you're trying to really actively focus on the tasks. It could take 5 minutes if you get really nice tasks, for example. And also, if you've got the synergy bonus happening, where you do random hits on enemies every so often, that can actually screw you up sometimes with some of these tasks. So that's another thing to take into account. But now we've got another one, which is defeat 2 dragons with a weak attack. So now maybe we can go for the other task a little bit more, start getting some more KOs in, and also going for that weak attack killing quest at the same time. So pick your battles wisely, but make sure that you are focusing on actually doing these tasks. This is my final warning to you before the event begins, because otherwise people are going to just completely ignore it and be like, why? Why didn't that work? Blah, 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 blah. Why am I not getting any dungeon stepping stones? Well, it's probably because you're not doing the tasks, to be honest. You see it all the time, like people are like, oh my god, I really do grind the dungeon, but I get like 200 stepping stones. Is that going to be enough? It's like, I genuinely believe that maybe you're not actually doing the tasks like you think you are. Because if you were actually doing the tasks, you probably wouldn't be saying that, you know? I think it's just an understanding that you need a strong shield at the beginning. If you've got a divine user, obviously it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier, but I can't stress enough that grinding means actual grinding out of these tasks. It's not just doing the dungeon runs, which can be annoying and boring enough by themselves, but it means actually doing the tasks. So that's my final warning to you. I hope you have your dungeon team ready. I hope you are prepared for an entire month of doing this over and over and over again, but more optimal at the beginning. And I guess good luck to all of us in terms of the dungeon runs that we are going to be looking forward to. We can only hope and pray that we get... Honestly, I don't mind dungeon weeks like this one, because there's just a few of the potential run-ending dragons that appear, but there aren't that many. So, yeah, I don't mind a week like this one. Obviously, we had that clay dragon just there that we'd need to make sure that we kill every time he comes up. But apart from that, there aren't really too many other threats. But it can be a little bit dicier later on if you don't have the proper dragons to prepare for some of the earth dragons. But anyway, I think I made my point. So good luck. I hope that you get everything that you want out of this upcoming divine event, and I'm sure I'll be updating you on tips and things like that when the event comes out. So don't worry if you're completely lost and stuck, I'll be around. And obviously there's always the Discord server full of people that have done all the divine events before that isn't just myself, so you can always ask them there as well. But for now, adios, and have a good day.